Long ago, in a place with tall trees and bright flowers, there stood a big, old house made of shiny white stones. The house had a red roof that looked like a bright hat under the sun. In this big house, two families decided to live together to share the space and help each other. The first family was the Mwangi family. David Mwangi was the father, and he was tall and strong. He had a big smile on his face most of the time. David's wife was Sophia Mwangi. She was gentle and kind, with warm eyes that made you feel safe. They had two children, Brian, who was 7 years old and loved to play soccer, and Eva, who was 5 years old and loved painting colorful pictures. The second family was the Okoye family. Ademola Okoye was the father, and he was a bit shorter, but always ready to work hard. He often wore a serious look because he wanted to provide the best life for his family. His wife was Miriam Okoye, a woman with a strong heart. She spoke in a clear, firm voice and liked to keep her house neat. They had a little boy named Tund, who was 6 years old and enjoyed playing with toy cars. When they first arrived at the old house, everyone was excited. The children ran around the big living room, screaming with joy. The walls were high, and the floors made loud echoes when they jumped up and down. Brian and Tund kicked a small ball, while Eva giggled and clapped her hands in delight. "Be careful, children," Sophia Mwangi called out gently. "We don't want anyone getting hurt." Miriam looked around at the high ceilings and large windows. She smiled and said, "I think we will be very happy here. Look at all this space. The children can play and run around safely." "Yes," David replied, his smile wide. "We have so much room. Our families will be very comfortable." Ademola nodded, his eyes filled with hope. It is a dream come true. Two families becoming one big family. We can share our meals, share our stories, and help each other. For many days, the Mwangi and Okoye families lived in perfect peace. Early in the morning, the fathers would sit by the big wooden table in the dining room. They drank hot tea and talked about work, money, and how to make life better for everyone. The mothers cooked together in the wide kitchen, making tasty meals that smelled like spices and fresh bread. Sometimes, in the late afternoon, they all sat on the front porch. They watched the sunset paint the sky in red and orange colors. The children told funny jokes, and the parents laughed loudly. At night, they shared stories about brave heroes and magical lands. Then they went to bed feeling warm and safe. One day, the families discovered that the house had a special attic. It was dusty, with boxes full of old clothes and papers. Eva sneezed from the dust while Tund tried on a silly old hat with a big feather on top. Brian held up an old golden amulet that glimmered in the light. The amulet was shaped like a small circle with strange drawings on it. "What's this?" Brian asked, holding it out for everyone to see. Sophia looked at it and shrugged. "I'm not sure, dear. Maybe it's just an old piece of jewelry." But Miriam had heard stories about houses like this one. She said, "Sometimes these old things belong to the people who built the house long, long ago. They might even bring good luck." Eva's eyes sparkled. "I like it. It looks magical." Everyone chuckled, and they put the amulet back in the box. They planned to clean it up later and maybe put it in a display case. For now, it was just a pretty old object they had found in their new home. Everything seemed perfect. The parents were friendly, the children played together, and the old house was full of laughter. No one could guess that trouble was about to begin. But soon, small seeds of jealousy and whispers of suspicion would start to grow. And as those dark feelings took root, they would change the house's peaceful life forever. A few weeks passed, and life in the old house felt cozy. David worked in a nearby town, where he was a manager at a big store. Ademola was struggling to find steady work, so he helped around the house. He cleaned the yard, fixed broken doors, and painted old walls. Sometimes, he felt sad that he did not have a stable job, but David would cheer him up. "Don't worry, Ademola," David said one afternoon. "I'll keep my ears open for any opportunity. One day, you'll find a good job, and our families will be even happier." Ademola smiled a little. "Thank you, my friend. I trust you. I just hope something comes up soon." Miriam, however, began to feel a small, unpleasant twinge in her heart whenever she saw how her husband relied on David. She whispered to him at night, "Are you sure David is really helping you find a job, or is he just telling you that?" Ademela frowned in the dark. "What do you mean?" "I've seen the way David talks to other people," Miriam replied. "He is always so confident. Maybe he wants to keep you under his wing, so you never become as successful as he is." Ademela sighed. "Miriam, I think you are overthinking. David is our friend. Let's not start trouble." Miriam did not argue further, but her worries grew inside her. Every time she saw Sophia Mwangi walk around in nice clothes or bake big cakes in the brand new oven David had bought, Miriam felt a little pang of envy. She wanted what Sophia had. She wanted a stable life with no money worries and a home she could call her own. Meanwhile, Sophia was completely unaware that Miriam felt this way. She enjoyed cooking with Miriam and teaching new recipes. She even shared her clothes when Miriam needed something fancy to wear. But Miriam still felt a nagging feeling that Sophia saw herself as better, always smiling so sweetly. "Let's make dinner together," Sophia suggested one day. "I have a great recipe for chicken stew." Miriam forced a smile. "Sure, that sounds good." In the living room, David and Ademela joked about the local soccer team. They had become close, but beneath their laughter, a small cloud was forming. Ademela wondered if David was truly searching for work leads or just saying so to keep him content. Tund, Brian, and Eva did not notice the grown-ups' problems. They were too busy playing hide-and-seek in the large hallway, giggling and squealing. They slid across the shiny floor and built little forts with cushions and chairs. But one evening, a loud argument broke out. It happened when David returned home from work with a new smartphone. He was excited to show Sophia, who had been wanting a phone with a better camera. As Sophia opened the box with bright eyes, Miriam walked in, carrying a basket of laundry. "Oh, that's a fancy phone," Miriam said. "It must be very expensive." David smiled proudly. "Yes, it's one of the latest models. Sophia deserves it. She takes so many photos of the kids. Now they'll be even better." Ademela felt a sting in his chest. He had been saving money for a simpler phone for Miriam, but he did not have enough yet. Seeing David buy something so costly without any trouble made him feel insecure. "I see," he said softly. Miriam, sensing her husband's discomfort, placed the laundry basket on the floor. "You know," she said, trying to hide the bite in her voice, "some of us are still hoping to find steady work. But maybe we should all just buy fancy phones instead." David looked surprised. "What do you mean, Miriam?" She shrugged. "It's nothing. I just think some people should help others more before spending so much on themselves." Sophia's eyes widened. "But David always tries to help. He's been talking to everyone he knows about a job for Ademela." Ademela's face turned red. He did not want to fight, but he also felt hurt. "I don't see any job offers yet." Silence filled the room. The children, who had been playing nearby, quietly stopped their game. They sensed the tension and crept away to their bedrooms. No one wanted to see the grown-ups arguing. Sophia cleared her throat. "We're doing our best, Miriam. Please don't misunderstand our intentions." Miriam sighed. "Maybe I'm just tired. Let's not fight." They ended the conversation, but the air felt heavy. Something had shifted in the house that night, the first crack in their friendly bond. And like a little crack in glass, it would only get bigger unless someone fixed it. Far away in the dusty attic, the golden amulet lay in its box, half buried under old papers. It gleamed faintly, as if it could sense the growing tension in the house below. No one knew that soon, the amulet would become part of a bigger conflict, and life in the old house would never be the same again. Days went by, and both families tried to pretend that everything was fine. They still cooked together, still laughed at the children's jokes, and still shared the big dining room table. But if anyone looked closely, they could see little frowns and hear small sighs. One afternoon, Eva wanted to show her mother a new drawing she had made. It was a picture of the house with everyone standing in front, smiling. She ran to Sophia and held up the colorful paper. "Mommy, look," Eva said, waving the drawing. "I drew you, Daddy, Brian, Tund, and Auntie Miriam and Uncle Ademola. Sophia smiled. "Oh, that's lovely, Eva. Let's hang it on the wall." Eva giggled. "Yes, please. The house looks happy." At that same moment, Tund wanted to explore the attic. He remembered the cool old hat and the gold amulet. "Mom, can we go upstairs and see the boxes again?" he asked Miriam. Miriam was busy cutting vegetables for dinner. She paused and said, "Not right now, Tund. It's dusty up there, and I need to finish cooking." Tund pouted. He really wanted to look at the shiny gold amulet. "Please, Mom? I promise I'll be careful." David walked into the kitchen. "I can take Tund to the attic," he offered with a kind smile. Miriam hesitated, but then nodded. "All right, just watch him closely. There might be sharp or old things that could hurt him." David gave her a quick nod. He and Tund climbed the narrow stairs to the attic, where sunlight shone through a small window in the roof. They opened the creaky wooden door and stepped inside. Dust filled the air, making Tund sneeze. "Achoo!" Tund rubbed his nose and looked around. The boxes stood in tall piles, and old furniture lay scattered across the floor. Tund headed straight for the box where they had found the golden amulet before. It was labeled with faint words that no one could read. But when Tund opened the box, he gasped. "It's gone." David raised an eyebrow. "What's gone?" "The gold amulet," Tund exclaimed. "I saw Brian put it back in this box, but now it's not here." David rummaged around, pushing aside dusty papers and old clothes. The amulet was nowhere to be found. He even checked under the box and around the attic, but it was missing. "How strange," David said, scratching his head. Maybe Brian took it to show someone. When they went downstairs, Tund ran to Brian. "Brian, did you take the gold amulet from the attic?" Brian shook his head. "No, I haven't been up there in days." Tund frowned. "Then where did it go?" Soon, everyone in the house knew that the amulet was missing. The children were only sad because it was a cool treasure, but the adults started to point fingers at one another. Miriam felt sure that it must have been stolen. "I am certain I saw it in the attic last week," Miriam said, crossing her arms. "Who could have taken it?" David thought about all the visitors that had come by. Only a few neighbors had dropped in. "None of them went upstairs," he said. Ademola tried to stay calm, but his voice sounded worried. "Look, it might just be misplaced. Let's all search the house." So they looked in every corner of every room. They checked drawers, under beds, and behind shelves. The amulet was gone. Sophia spoke gently, trying to keep the peace. "It might turn up. Maybe it fell out of the box or got stuck in a crack." But Miriam had a different idea. She whispered to Ademola when they were alone. "David found it first. Maybe he sold it or took it to get extra money." Ademola's eyes widened. "You really think David would do that?" Miriam shrugged. "You never know. People can hide their true selves." The missing amulet became a big mystery in the house. Everywhere people turned, they found no answers, only doubts. Whispers started to swirl about who might have stolen it. The children felt the change. Grown-ups no longer smiled as easily or laughed as loudly. At night, when everyone tried to sleep, they heard creaks and groans in the old walls. The house seemed to be breathing in the darkness. Some nights, a soft tapping sound came from the attic, like a small animal running around. But whenever David or Ademola checked, they found nothing. The once happy home was now filled with suspicion. The lost amulet was only the beginning. Soon, bigger arguments and deeper hurts would follow. For the old house, which had stood strong for many years, these new problems were like a dark storm gathering overhead. And no one knew just how bad that storm would become. A week passed since the amulet vanished. Tensions grew like weeds in a garden. Small problems that seemed unimportant before suddenly felt huge. If someone forgot to wash a plate or left dirty shoes at the door, it could spark an argument. Miriam's feelings of jealousy got stronger. She noticed how David bought fresh flowers for Sophia. She saw how Sophia's dresses were always neat and new-looking, while Miriam often wore older clothes. Miriam also noticed something else, the way David sometimes looked at her. Late one night, Miriam tiptoed downstairs to get a glass of water. She found David sitting alone at the dining table, reading a book under a small lamp. He looked up and smiled politely. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked softly. Miriam shook her head. "No, I was thirsty. What about you?" He sighed. "I was thinking about work. A lot of responsibilities." She nodded and poured water into a cup. They sat quietly for a moment, the only sound being the soft buzz of the kitchen light. Suddenly, David said, "I appreciate all you do for this house, Miriam. You cook, you clean, you watch over the kids. It can't be easy." Miriam felt her cheeks warm at the praise. She gave a small smile. "Thank you. It's nice to feel noticed." In that dim light, something shifted. They were just two people, feeling lonely and burdened. It started with a gentle conversation and a shared worry about the future. But as nights passed, David and Miriam found more reasons to meet secretly, especially when everyone else was asleep. At first, it was just talking. David shared his frustrations about Sophia always expecting him to buy things. Miriam spoke about her envy of Sophia's life. They understood each other's struggles. They listened, they comforted each other. And then one night, they crossed a line that should never have been crossed. Miriam kissed David in the quiet shadows of the living room. David pulled away, shocked. "No, Miriam. We can't do this. It's wrong." Miriam's face was full of regret and longing. I'm sorry. I just feel so lost." But deep inside, both felt a strange spark. They tried to resist, but the more they talked, the more they craved each other's company. Soon, it turned into a secret affair they told themselves was just for comfort. Of course, secrets don't stay hidden forever. One afternoon, Brian wanted to show his father a new trick he learned with a soccer ball. He searched all over the house and finally went to the garden. There, behind a tall hedge, he saw his father, David, and Miriam talking in low, serious voices. They were standing very close, too close. Brian's eyes grew wide. He might have been only 7, but he knew something was wrong. He ran back into the house, confused and afraid. Later that day, Brian overheard Miriam and David talking again near the kitchen door. Words like love, secret, and no one must know floated through the air. Brian told no one. He was scared. He loved his mother, Sophia, and didn't want to hurt her. He also didn't want to make his father angry. But guilt and worry gnawed at him, and he grew quiet, no longer laughing as much while playing with Tund. Meanwhile, Sophia noticed that David seemed distant. He came home later from work. He avoided her eyes. She asked him, "Is everything all right, David? You look worried." He forced a smile. "I'm just tired, my dear. Lots on my mind." Sophia tried to believe him, but her heart felt uneasy. She did not know about the terrible betrayal that was happening right under her nose. She did not know that her husband was slowly falling into a trap with her friend, Miriam. And Miriam, torn by her own guilt, acted even colder towards Sophia, as if pushing her away would keep the secret safe. This was a strong crack in the house. A crack made of lies and hidden desires. Even though David and Miriam tried to hide, the house's walls seemed to watch with silent eyes. Sometimes old floorboards creaked beneath their feet, as if warning them to stop. But they did not stop. Their meetings continued in hush-hush corners, in shadowy hallways, and in the darkest hours of the night. And with every secret whisper and every forbidden touch, the storm inside the house grew bigger, ready to burst and wash away everything in its path. One day, Sophia and Ademela decided to go shopping in the nearby town. They took Brian and Tund along, leaving David, Miriam, and little Eva at home. The trip was supposed to be quick. Buy groceries, pick up some new clothes for the children, and return. On their way back, Sophia realized she had forgotten her wallet. "Oh dear," she said, checking her purse. "I must have left it on the kitchen table." Ademela laughed. "I do that all the time. Let's go home and get it." They turned the car around and headed back, arriving at the house earlier than expected. Sophia went straight to the kitchen. As soon as she picked up her wallet, she heard whispers from the living room. Curious, she walked quietly toward the voices. What she saw made her heart freeze. David was holding Miriam's hand, speaking softly. Their faces were too close, and the look in their eyes was not innocent. Sophia gasped. David, what is going on here? David and Miriam jumped apart like frightened cats. Miriam's face turned pale. David stuttered, Sophia, you're home so soon. Before Sophia could ask any more questions, Ademola walked in, carrying the shopping bags. He noticed how stiff everyone looked. He saw Sophia's shocked face, Miriam's trembling lips, and David's guilt-filled eyes. What's happening? Ademola demanded, narrowing his eyes. Sophia's voice shook with anger. I just found your wife and my husband together, holding hands and whispering. They looked far too comfortable. Ademola's face turned red. Miriam? Is this true? Miriam could not speak. She opened and closed her mouth, but no sound came out. Then she burst into tears, covering her face with her hands. David tried to explain. It's not what you think. I was just comforting her. She was upset about something. Sophia glared at him. Comforting her? That's a lie. I can see the guilt on your face. Ademola's voice rose. David, how could you do this to me? I thought we were friends, like brothers. David tried to step forward. Look, calm down. Let's talk about this like adults. Ademola hurled the shopping bags to the floor. Eggs and fruit spilled everywhere. Talk? You want to talk after betraying me in my own home? Sophia started to cry, but her tears were angry. She pointed at Miriam. And you. I treated you like a sister. How could you do this? Eva, hearing the yelling, came running into the room. She froze, seeing everyone's faces red and tearful. Mommy, Daddy, what's wrong? Why is Auntie Miriam crying? Sophia wiped her tears, trying to stay calm in front of the child. Eva, go back to your room, please. Now. Eva looked at her mother's angry face and ran away, scared. Brian and Tund, who had been waiting in the car, heard the shouting and rushed inside, only to be ushered away by Sophia and Ademola, who did not want them to see the fight. The argument grew louder. Accusations flew back and forth. David admitted he had grown close to Miriam, but he insisted they never meant to hurt anyone. Miriam sobbed, saying she felt lonely and misunderstood, and it all just happened. Sophia felt betrayed. She called David a cheater. She called Miriam a liar. Ademola threatened to leave the house forever, taking Tund with him. David begged everyone to calm down, but it was useless. In the heat of the moment, someone mentioned the missing amulet. Miriam pointed at David, saying, Maybe you stole it to get money for yourself. You and your fancy phones and gifts. David's face twisted in anger. Don't blame me for that. For all we know, you could have taken it. Ademola raised his voice even more. Stop it. None of this matters now. What matters is that you two have betrayed our trust. The noise echoed through the walls, and somewhere in the depths of the house, something seemed to creak in response, as if the old house itself felt the pain and rage bubbling inside it. By the end of the fight, no one trusted anyone else. Sophia refused to sleep in the same room as David. Ademola took his wife aside and said he would leave if she did not end whatever was happening between her and David immediately. Miriam cried that she loved only her husband, but her words felt hollow. The children, huddled in a corner, heard the shouting and wept silently. The warmth of the house, the laughter that once filled the halls, was gone. Only anger and sadness remained. And somewhere far above, in the dusty attic, the missing gold amulet seemed to glow just a little, like an unseen reminder that the worst was yet to come. After the big fight, life in the house turned dark. No one spoke kindly anymore. They only talked when they had to, and, even then, their words were sharp as knives. The children tiptoed around, afraid to upset the grown-ups. Then, strange things began to happen. At first, they were small. Doors that were locked at night would be found wide open in the morning. Lights flickered even when the bulbs were new. Shadows moved across walls, even when no one was near. Late one evening, Sophia walked into the kitchen to get a glass of milk. She heard a whisper right behind her, but when she turned around, no one was there. Her heart pounded, and she fled to her bedroom, feeling spooked. The next day, Ademela entered the living room to find footprints on the floor, tiny, muddy footprints that led in a circle and then disappeared. He followed them, but they stopped in the middle of the room as if whoever made them had vanished into thin air. Miriam tried to do laundry one afternoon, but the washing machine overflowed for no reason. Water spilled all over the floor, soaking her feet. When she tried to turn it off, the switch refused to budge, and she had to unplug the machine to make it stop. David found that important files he kept for work were missing from his bag. He searched everywhere, only to discover them later, torn to pieces, in a corner of the attic. He had no idea how they got there. With each strange event, the house seemed to grow colder. The once cozy home was now filled with unseen eyes and restless spirits. The grown-ups began to wonder if the house was haunted or cursed. They bickered about what to do, each one blaming the other for bringing bad luck. Sophia accused Miriam of bringing evil spirits by her betrayal. Miriam shot back that David brought them in by being dishonest. David pointed at Ademela, saying he always spoke of old superstitions. Ademela, fed up, shouted, "All of this started because you two broke our trust." The children heard these fights and became even more frightened. Eva asked her mother, "Are we safe, Mommy?" But Sophia, who had always been gentle and kind, could only hug Eva tightly and say, "I don't know." One night, a loud thump echoed through the house. Everyone woke up in alarm. David and Ademela grabbed flashlights and ran upstairs to the attic. The room was empty. But then, they saw a faint glow coming from a corner. They crept closer, shining their lights on the dusty boxes. That's when they saw the gold amulet. It was lying on the floor, broken into 2 pieces. A thin crack ran through the center, where the strange symbols had been carved. David picked it up carefully. How did this get here? It was missing for weeks. Ademela shook his head. I don't know, but something isn't right about that thing. Why is it broken? They brought the broken amulet downstairs. When Sophia and Miriam saw it, they gasped. Miriam asked, "Did you find who broke it? Did you see anyone up there?" David shook his head. No, we only found it like this. Sophia touched the broken pieces and shivered. It feels cold. That night, nobody slept well. The house made more noises than before, groans, taps, and rustles that echoed in the darkness. Some of the children said they heard whispers calling their names. Even the grown-ups started feeling dizzy or upset for no reason. It became clear that the house was no longer just a house. It was a place of unrest, fed by their lies, anger, and betrayal. The families began to fear they were living under some kind of curse. They decided they needed help. Perhaps an elder from the village, someone who knew about ancient traditions, could guide them. Or maybe they should leave the house altogether. But neither family wanted to give up the home they had worked so hard to share. And the children still hoped that, somehow, everyone would make peace. But soon, they would learn that making peace might be harder than they ever imagined. Something darker was at play, and it was hungry for their fear and sadness. It would not rest until it got what it wanted, no matter who had to suffer for it. As the strange happenings continued, a curious visitor appeared at the front gate. She was an old woman with a wrinkled face and kind, but tired eyes. Her hair was white, and she leaned on a wooden cane. She wore a simple dress and carried a small bag that looked handmade. Sophia spotted her first from the living room window. She called everyone together, and they walked outside, staying a few steps away from the gate. "Hello," David greeted politely. "Can we help you?" The old woman smiled gently. "My name is Mama Zuri. I used to visit this house when I was a little girl. My father worked here for the people who built it. I heard rumors that the house had come alive with anger. I came to see if it was true." Ademela blinked in surprise. "How did you hear about what's happening here?" Mama Zuri tapped her cane on the ground. "Bad news travels fast, my child. People talk when strange things happen. I may be old, but I still listen." Miriam looked uneasy. "Are you a fortune teller or something?" Mama Zuri shook her head. "I am just an old woman who remembers the stories of this land. The house stands on sacred ground. If people living inside are full of hate and lies, the ground cannot rest. That's why I came to warn you. Sophia glanced at the others. They were all thinking the same thing. They needed help, no matter how strange the source. So they opened the gate and invited Mama Zuri inside. The moment she stepped onto the porch, a gust of wind blew past, rattling the windows. Mama Zuri frowned. Yes, she said softly, the spirits here are restless. There's a curse stirring in these walls, awakened by your anger and betrayals. David's face went pale. A curse? What kind of curse? Mama Zuri slowly walked through the living room, her cane tapping on the floor. She looked around, squinting at corners as if she could see things the others could not. Many years ago, she began, this house was built by a family who loved each other. They believed in sharing and unity. They left behind an amulet, a symbol of their bond. Whoever found it was supposed to keep that spirit of love alive. Ademala nodded. We found a gold amulet in the attic, but it disappeared and then came back broken. Mama Zuri sighed. Breaking the amulet means breaking the harmony. Dishonesty and hate are poison to that harmony. Now the house is fighting back. It wants you to suffer for dishonoring its sacred purpose. Miriam swallowed hard. Is there a way to fix this? Mama Zuri placed her hand on Miriam's shoulder. The only way to fix this is with truth and forgiveness. You must end the lies. You must speak from your hearts. Only then will the house find peace again. David glanced at Sophia, whose eyes were full of tears. We have tried to talk, but it always ends in anger, he admitted. The old woman took the broken amulet from David. She studied the crack along its surface. You need to mend more than this piece of gold. You need to mend the trust you have broken. If you do not, the house will continue to punish you. Worse things will happen. Mama Zuri stayed for a while, telling them old stories and ancient lessons. She warned them that true forgiveness means letting go of blame. She said that if they wanted the curse to end, they had to face what they did wrong and ask for forgiveness from the house, from each other, and from themselves. Before leaving, Mama Zuri looked at the children, who had been listening quietly. Protect your children, she said. They feel all your pain, even if they do not understand it. They suffer too. Heal your hearts for them, if not for yourselves. Then, as quietly as she came, the old woman left. The families watched her walk down the dirt road, her cane tapping in a slow rhythm. For a moment, a gentle breeze touched them, and it felt like a soft warning. They knew time was running out. If they did not put aside their pride, the dark force in the house would only grow stronger. But even with Mama Zuri's warning, the wounds were deep. Trust was shattered, and jealousy still burned in their hearts. Could they truly forgive each other? Or would they let their anger tear them apart, pulling them into a curse that had no end? No one could answer those questions yet. But soon, fate would force them to choose. And the choice they made would change their lives forever. Mama Zuri's visit brought a flicker of hope, but old habits die hard. David and Miriam tried to keep their distance, but lingering feelings made it awkward. Sophia and Ademala wanted to trust their spouses again, yet every time they looked at David or Miriam, memories of betrayal came rushing back. The house, however, was no longer waiting. It seemed angrier with every passing day. Doors slammed shut by themselves. Strange scratches appeared on the walls. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, footsteps echoed in the hall when everyone was in bed. One morning, Sophia woke up to find the living room furniture toppled over. The couch was upside down, the table was split in half, and chairs were strewn around. No one heard anything during the night, but it looked as if a wild storm had swept through. I'm scared, Mommy, Eva whispered, hiding behind Sophia's legs. Sophia forced a brave face. It's going to be all right, baby. We'll fix this. But she wasn't sure if she believed her own words. Fear glistened in her eyes. David tried to lift the broken table, grunting. This is getting worse. Maybe we should leave this place. Ademala shook his head. Leave? And go where? We put all our money into living here. Miriam spoke up, her voice trembling. There must be another way to stop this madness. An hour later, a loud crashing noise came from the kitchen. They rushed in to see plates and cups flying off the shelves, smashing on the floor. Tund and Brian screamed and clung to each other. The grown-ups stood frozen in shock, watching dishes break into tiny pieces all around them. Suddenly, the kitchen window shattered as if hit by a stone. Glass rained down. Luckily, no one was hurt. But the message was clear. The house was furious. That night, they tried to gather for a serious talk around the dining table, which David had managed to fix. Candles flickered, casting shadows on their worried faces. "We need to do what Mama Zuri said," Sophia began. "We have to tell the truth and forgive each other. Otherwise, this curse will never end." Ademela nodded. "I agree. So let's start. David, tell us the whole truth about you and Miriam." David's eyes flickered with shame. He glanced at Miriam, who was biting her lip. "We became close. We didn't mean for it to happen, but we hurt you all." "I am so sorry." Miriam spoke softly, tears in her eyes. "I let my jealousy and loneliness push me to do terrible things. Sophia, Ademela, please forgive me." Sophia was already crying. "David, you broke my heart. Miriam, you were like a sister to me. I don't know how to forgive something like this." Ademela's voice shook with anger. "You both shattered my trust. But I don't want this darkness to consume our families." They talked for hours, each person pouring out their pain. They admitted to jealousy, lies, and betrayal. There were raised voices, tears, and apologies. But was it enough to heal the deep wounds? After their talk, they all went to bed exhausted, hoping their honesty might calm the house. But that very night, the worst event took place. At midnight, a terrifying roar echoed through the halls. The walls shook, and the floor seemed to ripple. Everyone rushed out of their rooms, clinging to each other in panic. Windows cracked, paintings fell, and lights blinked wildly. Suddenly, water began to pour down from the ceiling, like rain inside the house. The children cried out, "What's happening?" No one had an answer. The house was fighting back with all its might, fueled by the negativity that still clung to their hearts. Even if they had tried to speak the truth, true forgiveness had not yet taken root. Anger and pain still lingered. They ran outside, where thunder boomed overhead. Lightning flashed, revealing the house standing tall yet ominous against the dark sky. For a moment, they thought they saw a shadowy figure standing in the highest window, watching them. Then it was gone. Soaked and terrified, they huddled together in the yard, listening to the storm rage around them. Through the rain, they could see the old house's windows glowing strangely, as if the building itself was alive. "What do we do now?" Miriam cried. David shook his head. I don't know." Sophia shivered. "Mama Zuri said we must truly forgive. Maybe we tried to talk, but we still blame each other inside. The house can feel it." Ademela looked at the broken windows and the water streaming out the doors. "We might lose everything if we don't fix this now." And so, in the middle of the stormy night, they faced a choice: run away or stand together to break the curse by finally letting go of all the anger in their hearts. Little did they know that the greatest test of their courage and love was yet to come. Drenched and shaking from the storm, the two families gathered under a large tree in the yard. It offered some shelter from the rain, but the thunder still rumbled loudly. "We can't stay out here all night," Sophia said, her voice trembling with cold and fear. Ademela looked toward the house. The rain had slowed, but the sky was still dark. "We have to go back in. That's our home, even if it's cursed right now." David nodded. "Yes, we face it together." They walked, step by step, back into the living room. Broken glass and fallen furniture littered the floor, but the raging storm inside had calmed. The house was eerily quiet. Suddenly, a soft glow appeared near the staircase. It moved like a lantern floating in the air, guiding them forward. The families exchanged nervous glances, but followed the light. It led them to the attic door, which was slightly ajar. They climbed the creaking stairs, hearts pounding. The glow brightened, illuminating the dusty room. In the corner, near the small window, they saw something that made them gasp. The spirit of an old ancestor, tall and dignified, stood holding the broken amulet. His face looked sad and wise, as though he had seen centuries of human struggle. In a deep, echoing voice, the spirit spoke. This house was built on love and honesty. It was meant to bring families together, not tear them apart. Yet you have broken its sacred trust. They stood frozen, hardly believing their eyes. Eva and Tund clung to each other, too frightened to speak. The spirit continued, "You found our amulet, the symbol of our unity. By allowing anger and lies to grow, you shattered it. Now the house we built is filled with darkness." Sophia mustered the courage to speak. "We're sorry. We never meant to bring such pain." Ademela added, "Please, tell us how to fix this. We want to make things right." The spirit looked at David and Miriam. "You two broke the sacred bond of marriage and friendship. Are you truly sorry?" Tears streamed down Miriam's cheeks. "Yes, I am so sorry. I was weak. I let my jealousy guide me." David bowed his head. "I regret it every moment. I betrayed my wife and my friend. I deserve punishment, but please free our families from this curse." The spirit's gaze shifted to Sophia and Ademela. "Can your hearts truly forgive? Or will you cling to hate?" Sophia closed her eyes. Images flashed in her mind. David smiling at her on their wedding day, Miriam laughing as they cooked. Memories of good times reminded her that love was there once. "I do forgive," she whispered, tears falling. "But I also need time to heal." Ademela swallowed hard. "I forgive you both. I can't live with hatred in my heart. Tun needs a father who knows peace." At that moment, the house seemed to sigh. The spirit slowly lifted the broken amulet, pressing the pieces together. A soft light glowed between his hands, and the amulet fused back into one. The crack vanished, replaced by a shining seam of gold. "Your honesty and your willingness to forgive have begun to mend what was broken," the spirit said. "But forgiveness is not just words. It is a path you must walk every day. If you stay true to your vow, this house will once again be a place of unity." Then, as quickly as it appeared, the spirit faded into nothing. The amulet dropped gently to the attic floor, whole again. The families let out a collective breath. For a moment, no one moved. Then Brian and Eva ran forward, picking up the restored amulet. It felt warm in their hands, like a living thing. "Daddy, look! It's fixed," Brian exclaimed, holding it up to David. David touched it, feeling a wave of relief wash over him. Miriam and Sophia embraced, tears still on their faces, not from sorrow but from the weight of what had just happened. Ademela placed an arm around both his wife and David, forming a small circle of unity. They all returned downstairs, where the house seemed calmer. Though furniture was still broken and windows shattered, the eerie feeling had faded. A sense of hope filled the air. "Tomorrow, we'll start cleaning and repairing," David said. "We'll make this house whole again, just like the amulet." Sophia nodded. "And we'll rebuild our trust step by step." Miriam and Ademela agreed. They knew it wouldn't be easy, but after seeing the spirit and feeling the power of true remorse, they were ready to try. Outside, the storm clouds parted, revealing a sky speckled with stars. It felt like a new beginning. The children, exhausted from fear and excitement, cuddled up to their parents, wanting nothing more than a peaceful night's sleep. But the final test, the strongest form of karma, was still waiting. Not even the spirit's blessing could stop what fate had in store. And though forgiveness had been spoken, the price of betrayal had not yet been fully paid. The next morning, bright sunshine poured into the house through broken windows. Despite the damage, the warmth of the sun felt like a welcome change. Everyone woke up early and gathered in the living room. David spoke first, his voice humble. "I want to fix everything I can. I'll buy new windows. I'll help mend the walls. I'll do anything to make this house a home again." Ademela placed a hand on David's shoulder. "We'll do it together, my friend. This home belongs to both our families." Sophia and Miriam exchanged a gentle smile. While pain lingered in their hearts, they were determined to let healing begin. They split up tasks. Some would clean, some would buy supplies, and the children would clear small debris, being careful of sharp objects. All day long, they worked tirelessly. David hammered nails to fix the broken tables. Ademela swept up shards of glass. Miriam and Sophia painted walls that had been stained or scratched. The children helped by picking up trash and fetching tools. By evening, the house looked much better. Not perfect, but mended. The family sat together at the dining table for dinner, a simple meal of rice, vegetables, and chicken. They ate quietly, feeling a sense of relief. The tension that once lived among them was slowly melting away. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Sophia got up to answer it and found 2 police officers standing on the porch. "Good evening," one officer said. "We received a report about a stolen gold amulet being sold to a local shop." The shopkeeper said he recognized the amulet from a description in the newspaper. "We'd like to ask some questions." The family stared at each other in confusion. David stepped forward. "The amulet belongs to us. It was lost, then found again, broken. We never sold it." The other officer spoke, glancing at his notes. "The shopkeeper claims that a man who looked like you, Mr. Mwangi, tried to sell it a week ago. He even gave a description matching your height and features." David's face turned pale. "That's impossible. I was at work a week ago." Miriam suddenly remembered her suspicion from before, that David might have stolen the amulet. She looked at him, uncertain. Had he secretly sold it? Sophia stepped forward. "Officer, there must be a mistake. The amulet is right here in our home." She showed the police the newly mended amulet. The officers examined it. "It looks exactly like the one the shopkeeper described, but we see no shop stamp. Are you certain no one took it to be sold?" David's head spun. Could it be that someone had faked being him? Or had the shopkeeper lied? Then, in a flash of realization, David remembered a distant cousin of his who resembled him slightly, a cousin with a history of petty theft. Could that cousin have sneaked into the house, stolen the amulet, and then lost it again? It seemed far-fetched, but stranger things had happened. The officers asked more questions, then apologized for the confusion. "It seems we don't have enough evidence to press charges. We just wanted to make sure no crime was committed here. We'll continue our investigation. Sorry for disturbing you." After the police left, everyone looked tired and tense again. Sophia sighed. "I can't believe someone reported our amulet as stolen." David rubbed his temples. "I'm just glad this is over." They finished dinner in silence. Then, as bedtime approached, they felt a strange heaviness in the air. It was as if the house was still waiting for some final thread of truth or justice to be revealed. Late that night, Miriam woke up with a sharp pain in her chest. She felt dizzy and stumbled out of bed. She made her way to the living room, searching for water. In the dim glow of the moon through the broken window, she saw a figure sitting on the couch. "Hello?" Miriam whispered, heart pounding. The figure turned, revealing a face she had seen in an old family photo David once showed her. It was the face of David's cousin, the very one he suspected. He smirked at her, holding the gold amulet in his hands. "Give that back," Miriam gasped, stepping closer. The cousin laughed softly. "I came to take what should have been mine. But it looks like the house doesn't want to let it go." In that moment, the air grew cold. The lights flickered once more. Then the cousin's smug grin vanished. The shadows in the room gathered behind him, forming into a shape. He let out a terrified scream. The amulet glowed, and the shape pounced, enveloping him in darkness. Miriam screamed, stumbling backward. The cousin dropped the amulet, clawing at the air as if fighting an invisible force. All around them, the house groaned. Windows rattled, walls shook, and a fierce wind blew through the living room. The cousin tried to run, but the shadow clung to him. David, Sophia, Ademola, and the children rushed downstairs at the commotion. They arrived just in time to see the shadow swirl around the cousin and vanish through the floor. When the lights came back on, the cousin was gone, leaving only the gold amulet on the rug. Tund whimpered, Where did he go?" No one had an answer. It was as if the house took him. Perhaps that was the final act of karma, the house claiming the one who truly tried to profit from the amulet. Miriam trembled, tears streaming down her face. It wasn't David who sold it. It was his cousin all along. David picked up the amulet, holding it protectively. The air felt still again, as though the house was finally at peace. In the days that followed, the two families lived in true honesty and respect. David and Miriam never returned to their old ways. Sophia and Ademela found it in their hearts to forgive, though the memories still lingered. The children felt a new warmth in the home. The house itself seemed calmer. The doors no longer slammed on their own, the lights stopped flickering, and the strange shadows vanished. It was as if the spirit of the ancestors had seen the final piece of betrayal punished, and now the house could rest. Weeks turned into months, and the families grew closer. They learned to treasure each other every day, remembering the darkness they once lived in. And whenever they looked at the gold amulet, placed in a special glass case in the living room, they felt a deep sense of gratitude and humility. They knew that greed and lies could tear people apart, but love and truth could mend even the deepest wounds. The curse had been lifted, but only because they chose to face their mistakes and stand together. The end.